Hey y'all, this is She Buys It with Whitney Nicely.
Yay! Hello and welcome back. I am so excited about today's interview because I was a guest on her podcast and we had an awesome conversation. So I know that today we're going to have another fantastic conversation. And I'm so excited to have Annie on the She Buys It podcast all the way from Oakland, California. We're going to be talking about her first deal, which was, kind of like a house hack, which is great. That's how lots of people get started. We're going to talk about her first deal, by herself. And we're going to dig into her first deal with her partner, Julie, and see how they're making these deals happen, especially being at home with the kids right now and all the crazy world that we're living in. So let's hop right in. Annie, did I miss anything that you want me to let everybody know about?
I think you got it all, Whitney. Let's dive in.
All right, fantastic. Tell me about that very, very, very first deal. And really take me even back further than just the first deal and how it happened. What were you doing? What did life look like? Where were you? Tell me all of that. And, one day, I believe everybody wakes up, well, most everybody, and they wake up and they say, you know what? I need to be a real estate investor.
I wish that had happened to me at some point. I wish that had happened. That first deal, I really totally fell into it, completely blind, had no idea what I was doing. Didn't intend to invest in real estate. It was a house hack. My husband and I had just gotten married. We were fresh out of college and we were 20 somethings looking for a trendy loft or a condo. We were living in Washington, D.C. at the time. And we were like, oh, let's look in the trendy neighborhoods. We're going to get a cool condo. We'll show all our friends. We could buy a place. And our realtor luckily stopped us and he said, well, that would be nice, but have you considered the long-term prospects of using this piece of real estate to build wealth? And so he said, he floated this idea past us. He said, well, Washington, D.C. has a lot of these old row homes. They're like townhomes, but each one is a separate home that you can purchase. And so he said a lot of these row homes have two units. They have a main unit and then also a basement in-law suite. And he said, you could rent that out. And then if you play your cards right, you could have somebody else help you pay down your mortgage. And eventually you could be cash flow positive. And coming from a family where my parents never even bought a home the whole time I was growing up, we always lived in apartments. I had never heard of such a thing where you could get somebody else to help you pay down your mortgage. And this whole cash flow positive thing, I was like, I don't even know what that means, but I love those words together. And so funny enough, and your listeners are going to love this, it's always the wife, the woman who finds the best deals, right? You buy real estate like you buy shoes. Most women buy shoes. So this one night, we had been looking for a little while. We've been looking at all these different row home possibilities or even small multifamilies. Couldn't find the right one. This one night, I was sitting at home. My husband was out with some friends. He was supposed to be home. He didn't communicate with me. We were sort of still newlyweds at the time. Didn't communicate with me, and I'm sitting at home fuming, waiting for him to get home. And I'm like, I can't even sleep. I'm so mad. And this is before the days of texting. So I get home, I'm so mad. And I'm like, I'm gonna just look at some real estate. And so I pop out my laptop and start looking at listings. And I found this brand new listing. It had just come on the market. It had been a foreclosure. And it was a row home with 2 units. It was completely vacant. The basement had previously been a brothel, so it needed some work, but it looked, from the pictures, it looked beautiful. So I'm looking at this piece of real estate and my anger just sort of dissipates. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing property. And my husband comes home. I don't even mention that he was out late. And I was like, look, check out this property. And that was the first one that we bought. We bought it for, I think it was $470,000 back in, this was 2008. It was 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths on the main level where we lived, and then the basement that had previously been a brothel. It was a 1 bed, 1 bath. So we rolled up our sleeves, we cleaned that place up, and we rented it out. And that first month, we got that first rental check from our tenants. I was like, oh my gosh, we put in some work, but we didn't do anything this month, and we got this rent check. This is incredible. So that was when I got hooked.
I love it. I also love that your realtor said, all right, y'all are cute, but let's be adults and really think this through. Like, bravo for your realtor, because a lot of realtors don't think like that. And I'm the broker for Whitney Buys Houses. And I will tell you that most realtors are just trying to figure out how to get first-time home buyers into their first home so they can get their commission check, and not really teaching people about real estate. So
yeah,
I think that is awesome.
I know.
Found a good one.
We did. And, he was doing it himself. And so he was teaching us as well. And so if it had not been for him, we would not have done that house hack. And then a few months later, because it was working so well, and we were this was 2008, 2009, we were able to get loans still, and we did an FHA loan. We were able to get into a second duplex right on the same block, right around the corner. So we now had 2 streams of passive income coming in. And then we continued to house hack once we moved to Oakland, where we are now. In fact, we're still house hacking right now. We have 2 young kids. They're 7 and 4, but we're still house hacking, and we're teaching them now about the power of passive income.
What did your parents say when you said, okay, great, I'm going to buy a house, but I'm also going to stick somebody we don't know in the basement?
Like I said, my parents had never bought a house, so they had no frame of reference. They were like, okay, cool. My dad was like, okay, so now you're rich, huh? You got like all this money coming in. I'm like, well, no, we still have a mortgage and all these expenses. So they didn't quite really understand how it worked, but they were on board.
That's good. That's awesome
Yeah.
that you got good parents that are going to be supportive of you.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. And then you got the second one around the corner. I call that a honey hole. Like, whenever you get one spot and then you get another one and another one,
Yes.
before you know it, you bought up the block.
Yeah.
And you've got this one place in town where you're a big fish in a small pond. Because it just really targets it. Or this is, where you can be the queen bee, and the money just keeps rolling in and working for you, and you don't have to go out and work for the money.
Yeah, exactly. And when you can capitalize on a specific market and you know it really, really well, then you don't have to, every time you invest in even a new submarket, you have to do the research, the legwork to figure out, okay, which streets are good, which streets are not so good, what's happening on this block and this block. But once you find a good spot, if you can continue to milk that for all it's worth, man, that saves you so much trouble.
For sure. I love that. Okay, awesome. So then y'all relocated to Oakland. Did you sell the 2 places in DC?
No, actually we held them. And once we moved out of that main unit and we rented it out, we were able to do exactly what our realtor said. We were able to make it cash flow positive. So not only were our tenants helping to pay down our mortgage, but they were able to cover all of it, including the expenses, and we could pocket some money every month. So it was fantastic. We were like, okay, so here's a lesson. We moved out and we were like, we're going to hold these forever. This is amazing. We're getting hundreds of dollars a month. We are never going to sell these things forever. This is just going to be easy peasy. So we moved out, we moved to Oakland. We kept, doing more duplexes. And then, this was like 2008 when we initially invested in those duplexes in DC. And it's been a while since 2008. So all of a sudden, the kitchens that we had renovated back in 2008, they're not as new as they were in 2008. Dishwashers started breaking down. Hot water heaters started breaking down. All of a sudden, we were like, oh, this isn't super easy as it used to be. Even though we have property managers in place, it's still, we have to make those strategic decisions about when and how, and have those reserves ready to cover those unexpected expenses. And so over time, even though we were still cash flowing, at one point, and this was fairly recent that we learned this lesson, this was maybe 2 years ago. So we had held these properties for 10 years. Remember, we were planning to hold them for the rest of our lives. We had them for 10 years and we were like, well, let's look at how much they are returning us in regard to how much equity we now have. Because initially when we put in, we got an FHA loan, we were able to put in, $15,000 to get this great home. We were cash flowing. We were like, this is a great return on investment. But then over the years, as we built up that equity, we didn't know to go back and look at the return on equity. We just kept thinking about the return on the $15,000. And so finally, a couple years ago, somebody was like, you might want to look at the return on equity. And so we said, okay, well, now that house, it's not $470,000. It's probably worth more like, almost $1 million at this point with how fast DC has grown. So we're like, wow, we have at least conservatively a couple $100,000 in equity. Now, when you look at, let's say, $200,000 or $300,000 in equity, and then you're looking at, $200 in cash flow a month, that's really not that much. So we're like, okay, so how can we pull out this equity or sell the property and then put that into somewhere else where we can start seeing a higher return on that investment? So that's exactly what we did. So we still hold that initial one, but we refinanced all of our cash out of it. And then the second one we sold and we put that equity to work for us somewhere else.
I love it. And I've never heard of a return on equity. So tell me more about that. How do you look at that? How do you analyze that?
Yeah. So your return on investment, your ROI, is what most people look at, right? So let's just take this house as an example. So we put $15,000 in initially. I think it was something around that, 15,000, let's say. And then let's say each month we were, math is going to kill me, but
it's okay.
let's
round
say,
numbers are fine.
Yeah, there we go. So let's say each month we were cash flowing like $500. Okay. So $500 on 15,000, that's a pretty good return. I would take that all day long, But then, so year one, we have 15,000 in the property. We don't have that much equity built up yet. We're still, paying down our mortgage. We haven't made quite very much of a dent in it. But let's fast forward 10 years, from 2008 to 2018. Now we've built up a lot of equity. We've paid down some of our mortgage and the market has appreciated. And that rent that we're starting to get is a little bit higher. It's starting to creep up and add to the value of the property as well. So now, instead of, let's say, 15K in the property, now we have a lot more equity. So our equity, which is locked in the property, is, let's say, $200,000, right? So if we were to sell that property, we could get that $200,000 and then we could take that cash, we could do something else with it, we could invest it somewhere else. But if it's locked in there, then the return on equity is it's very small. When you think about $200,000, if you were to put $200,000 into an investment and only get $500 a month back, that's really it's not very much money. I mean, that's what, $6,000 a year. That's, I don't know what that is, but it's less than 5%.
Is it like 3%?
Yeah, it's like a pretty low return on 200,000. So that's what you have to think about as you're investing in these properties, not just looking at it one time up front, but continually looking at, okay, how much equity do I have now and how much am I getting in returns? And is that a percentage that I'm comfortable with, or can I take that equity and put it to work harder somewhere else?
I love that. And I think a lot of times we forget about that. I know I've not gone back and looked at what equity I have and how much return I'm actually getting on it. Like now I'm going to have another conversation with my bookkeeper, and I've already had one with her this month. But that's really good to know, is what's the return on equity? Because you're right. You could pull that money out and put it into somebody else's deal and make 10 or 12%, but stuck in your deal, you're making 3%.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you don't even have to. I mean, you have lots of options, right? You can sell the property and pull that equity out and put it somewhere else. You can refinance, especially right now with rates being low, you can refinance and pull out some of that equity. Or you can even look at getting a home equity line of credit or a HELOC and using that equity that way. But I think the first step is taking a look at how much equity you have and then seeing, okay, is that equity really working hard for me in this property, or can I put it to work somewhere else?
I'm also really proud of you and your husband for being smart in your 20s so you were set up in your 30s so you could be ahead of the game in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, you know, a lot of people are already in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so they feel like they got to play catch up. But I think, you know, even the house hack, even the duplex, even look at multifamily, you can catch up really quick if you will just get started right now, because real estate is a long game. I mean, you waited 10 years before you even turned around and looked at it. And everybody wants to, you know, become an Instagram star and have a Lamborghini tomorrow. But the big, you know, change is in that 10-year glow up.
Yeah.
Where you go from not knowing what's up and having $15,000 invested in it to turning around twice. 10 years later, we got, let's say, 200,000 in equity in it. I mean, that is a serious glow up. Like, that is amazing.
Yeah. And there's nothing else like it, right? Like, if you were to work a job, if you stop working that job doesn't pay you anymore.
You're gone.
But you have this asset and we weren't even thinking about it. We were just like, every month, let's get this cash flow. And then all of a sudden we started thinking about the equity. We're like, oh my gosh, it's like an automatic bank account. It's like building up all of this equity for us. We didn't even have to do any work for it, which is incredible.
And it's a slow and steady, right?
It's not a get rich quick. It's not sexy. It's just you buy it and you hold it, but it's get rich for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. Yes. And now this is a great market to buy something low like that and ride with it for 10 years.
Yeah, people are scared right now. But, you know, for those of us who have been in real estate for a while, we've been waiting for this moment.
I'm like, finally, there's something to buy again.
I know. We've been waiting for this clearance sale. We're like, when is it going to come? When's it going to come? And so, you know, as they say, as I think Warren Buffett says, you know, you got to be, what is it? He says you got to be selfish when,
be greedy when others are selfish and selfish when others are greedy.
Yeah. Something like, or greedy when others are scared.
You got to run in when everybody else is running out, and run out when everybody else is running in, for sure.
But that takes guts, right? And so that's why it's so great to have people like you, people like us that can, you know, share our knowledge and our experience, and we can say, hey, look, this is what we're seeing. And right now, despite all of the fear that everybody's experiencing, it's actually a really good time, and we're about to see some really great opportunities.
I agree 100%. And you brought up Warren Buffett. I had to tell you that since school is out right now, one of the guys that works with my mom, he's a truck driver, and his kid is 15. And so his kid's out of school. He's bored. He's looking for something to do. And I've got a flip project going on. It's my own house, but I need things like, I need all the screws. I'm a little OCD. I need all the screws to be straight up and down on all of my switch plates. I need my door handles changed over. I need some old fans brought down and new fans gone up. I mean, stuff that I could hire just about any man to go do. But there's this 15-year-old kid who is looking for something to do, and he needs some practice with a drill and a screwdriver and maybe a little bit of hammering. So I got his dad to agree. I'm not really into child labor, but I am the product of child labor, so I am kind of okay with it. And, you know, I also just think it's good for 15-year-old boys to have something to do and sweat out a little bit and practice on before it's important, you know?
Totally. I 100% agree.
So I've hired this kid, basically, to do some little honeydews at my house for me. And I told him today, he told me yesterday he had to come in late because he had to finish an exam for his schoolwork. And I said, totally fine. Absolutely. And then when I was there, he told me he made a 95 on it and he was really proud of himself and he was super excited. And he was telling me about some other stuff. And, you know, school isn't like his thing exactly, I don't think, but he's doing good at it and he's sticking with it, right? So I told him, he was telling me how he's trying to save up money to buy a pickup truck. He's 15, he's gonna turn 16 and needs a pickup truck, right? And I said, well, you know, you can work for me or work for my brother and we'll pay you and help you get your pickup truck. He was like, okay, awesome. But then this morning, after I was talking to him and giving him his list of things to do, I was like, have you ever heard of Warren Buffett? And he said, no. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. He's like this gajillionaire. Okay.
Right.
But when he was your age, he was selling golf balls that he dug out of a pond. He was delivering newspapers. He was getting different routes. He was selling pinball machines and sticking them in barber shops. And he was doing some really cool things to hustle up some cash that nobody else his age was doing.
Yeah.
And so I told this kid that I've hired, I said, he had his iPhone, he was wearing his AirPods when I stopped by one time yesterday. And I said, if you'll listen to The Snowball Effect, Warren Buffett's book, if you'll listen to that up until Warren gets married, because after he gets married, I don't care if you listen to it. But listen to it up until the point where he gets married. And you don't have to write a report on it, but tell me what you learn, tell me what's going on, tell me what you like, tell me what parts are boring. I don't care. But tell me that you've read it or listened to it while you're working for me and I'll give you an extra $30. He was like, oh, I'll finish it today. And I was like, it's a really big book. You won't finish it today, but
love that ambition.
Yeah, but I'm down for it. If you want to work at 15, if you want to hustle up some money to buy your own truck and have your own pride in it and figure out some hand skills at the same time, then I'll be willing to plant some seeds in your head to say, learn some different strategies, learn from the giants that are still breathing air with us today. Learn from them. And, you know, maybe it'll spark something in him and maybe it won't. But I told his mom, his stepmom, who also works with us, I said, you know, if he does really good on this, then I'll buy him an Audible subscription. And every other month he can pick a book and I'll pick a book. And as long as he tells me and learns something, and it's kind of, you know, like I'd love for him to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'd love for him to read, you know, something else. And this is totally off topic, but like, I think that's important to find people that have that. I want to learn. I want to make money. I want to grow. I want to all this stuff, and learn from Warren Buffett, learn from Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, even when I asked his stepmom this morning, I said, do you know Warren Buffett? And she was like, yeah, he does the stocks. And my mom was like, yeah, he buys stocks. And I was like, okay, nobody here has ever read Warren's book. I'm the only one here. Like, now everybody gets the assignment. Whoever finishes it gets $30.
There you go.
No, but it's so important that this isn't my kid, but I care enough about him to say, let me help you learn something.
Yes.
You're going to be on my time. You're going to listen to what I want you to listen to.
How fortunate that he's got a mentor like you. I wish I had somebody like you when I was younger. I mean, like,
you had that that realtor.
It's true. It's
that
true.
man mentored you, whether you paid him for that or not. He poured into you.
Yes.
And now look where you are.
I know. And I mentioned I have 2 boys, they're 7 and 4, and they could not be more different. But my 7-year-old has this entrepreneur streak in him. He's got these big ideas. And so during this time when he's, you know, at home, I said, you know, we always complain about how the public school system doesn't prepare us for real life. Why am I stressing out about him doing these math worksheets? I'm like, forget it. Let's just ditch those. And we started doing entrepreneurship and financial literacy. And we read through Robert Kiyosaki's kids book, Escape the Rat Race, which I didn't even know existed. It's a graphic novel, and it basically takes Rich Dad, Poor Dad and puts it into this graphic novel style. And it reminded me of some of the stories that he had told in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You know, he was talking about when he was younger, he was really into this concept of he wanted to be rich. And so his friend's dad hired him and his friend to work at their little grocery store. and paid him 10 cents an hour. And he was like, 10 cents an hour? What is this? Extortion? Like, he's like, this is child labor. He's like complaining. And then his friend's dad said, okay, well, now I'm not going to pay you anything. And he said, you're going to come and work for me for free. And he said, work for free? And he's like, look, do you want to learn to be rich or not? And he's like, okay, I'll do it. So he went and he did it. He was stocking the shelves, for free now. But he said what that allowed him to do was, now that he wasn't making money, he was looking around for opportunity. And so then one day, the guy who came, the delivery guy brought all of these comic books to stock the shelves. And then all the comic books that hadn't sold from the previous weeks, the store manager would I forget, they'd clip off the front page or something and return it to the delivery guy for a little bit of money back. And then the rest of the comic book, the guy would just toss. And Robert said, wait, what are you doing with those comic books? And he said, oh, well, these are done, when we recycle them or whatever. He said, no, can we have those? And the guy said, you can have them as long as you don't sell them. So then Robert's thinking, I can't sell them, but I've got all these free comic books. And so he and his friend Mike, they created this lending library where they would charge their friends 10 cents, and they would come in and they'd get to read all of these comic books for an hour, as many as they could for an hour. And then all of a sudden, because he wasn't getting paid, it opened his eyes to all these opportunities, and he found this opportunity that made him way more than if he had just worked as an employee.
And that's brilliant too, because how often are we challenged to think outside the box? Like, okay, great, I can come and clock in, I'm going to make this much, whatever. But your boss is better off if you figure out other ways. You're going to be better off if you figure out other ways. So I love that example. And I love that you are teaching your kids this so that, when they're in their 20s and looking at their first home, they're automatically looking at, a duplex, a quadplex, duh. And they're teaching their friends. And then it just keeps the ripple going instead of this division of some people know this stuff and some people don't.
I know. And, we're trying to for years, we've been trying to teach our kids about the power of saving and investing, and it just wasn't clicking. And we'd be like, no, you should save that. And he's like, but I can buy a toy right now. Why would I save it? And we went through this book, and he realized this power of compound interest and investing. And immediately, we barely closed the cover on the book, and he went over to where he keeps his money. He's like, okay, I need 3 separate jars. I need to save, a spend, and invest. And he was like, okay. And he took all his money and he put it into the save jar. I'm like, thank you. Finally, he gets it.
Perfect book. I knew there was a kids rat race game, cash flow game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've played that with my step boys, but I didn't know there was a book. That's fantastic. Well, maybe I'll look into that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a good one.
That's good. Awesome. I'm so glad you're teaching the kids that too. And I think a lot of moms are stressed out too about making sure we get through the math. Why don't you take your kid to work? My mom started taking me to work. If I was sick in elementary school, I was going and laying on the couch at her office. I was going to be at work. And if I felt good enough to watch TV, I felt good enough to make copies. And I would be in there making copies.
Yep.
Or I'd be out running something, and if I was sick, but sometimes you're kind of sick and you're not really sick.
Right.
Those were the days that I was in the office.
Yeah.
But that's good, and that's good learning, and I remember that, and I'm okay with it. Somebody's gonna hate me for saying that, but I am okay with it.
Yeah. And then whenever he's, he wants something, right now he's got his mind set on an Xbox, and he's like, oh, can I get an Xbox? I'm like, sure, you can get an Xbox. Figure out how you're going to get the money to do it. And he's like, well, can you give me money? I'm like, no, I'm not going to give you money. But if you think of a service that you can provide me to save me time or make my life easier, I might pay you to do that thing. So it's like all these little tricks. I wish somebody had challenged me when I was younger to think this way, but people were always like, okay, do this and then you get that. So I'd be like, okay, I'll check off the box, then I get paid. It's such an employee mindset. And so we're trying to foster in our kids this like free form thinking where they can think outside the box and really come up with their own ideas and know that there are no limits.
I was definitely a rule follower when I was a kid. Like, if you told me what to do, I was going to do it. And I was not asking why. My dad told me not to ask why, and he instilled that in me. And so I didn't ask why. I just did it. Like, okay, fine. This is what we're doing. But my papa has always been an entrepreneur. And he told me when I was a kid that if I made A's, he'd give me 10 or 20 bucks. I don't even remember. And so I would love making A's. And then I would love to go to work. Which, you know, most kids are like, oh, I don't want to go to work. Well, I knew I was going to get paid if I could take my report card and turn it in or a copy of it or, you know, whatever, and turn it in. I'd get paid. You know, I told my stepkids that when they were little that I would pay them for A's. But I've never seen a report card from them. They don't care about it apparently, or I wasn't forceful enough, or I didn't have as much influence as I thought I could. I don't know, but they never brought their report cards home. So now though, you know, I made this big announcement in the office, and now all the ladies in the office want to know if they can read the book and have their kids read the book, and I'll pay them for reading it. I'm like, well, if this is what it takes, that's fine. You know, I'm in East Tennessee, and Dolly Parton is the queen of East Tennessee, pretty much the queen of the South, but she's got a library situation where kids, I think up to 4, you can sign up, and she sends them a free book every month. And it was kind of her way. She did it for her dad because he couldn't read. So she couldn't read to every kid, but she could provide a book. All you gotta do is sign up. It's totally free. And so I feel like this might be my kind of way of doing that. Like, you read these books, and, you know, I've got other books that I think teenage boys would be into, like the Phil Knight Nike book is a good lesson on the climb up. I read the Netflix book, which I had no idea was like a struggle. I thought they were just, you know, always Netflix, but they weren't, you know? So there's lots of great books out there, but I believe readers are leaders. And so whatever it is I have to figure out, however many kids I have to put on the payroll to make sure that they write their extracurricular books for Whitney. We'll just have to figure that out. That's fine.
That's awesome. One book at a time.
I'm game for it. Yeah, one lesson at a time. Those are just seeds. Who knows where they'd go to? And if we could get out of this public school mentality of employee mindset, there'd be so much more available.
Yes. You know, I got to tell you, in the 10 years following college, I held 9 jobs, 9 different jobs, because I thought I have to find a job. And I just kept going from one place to the next. Every time I started a job, I was like, okay, this is the one. I was always chasing impact. I was like, this next job, I'm going to be able to make a huge impact. And at first I was able to come with my ideas, and they were open, and then it sort of fall into you can't do that because this is all the way that things are done here. And then I'd always be like, I can't have that impact. Okay, I'm going to go to the next job. And I thought it was just a matter of like, I wasn't finding the right fit. I was looking around at all my friends, and I was like, how are you able to hold a job for 5 years? I'm like, that's crazy. Every day going in, doing the same thing. Like, how are you able to do that? And I realized that I was always just meant to be an entrepreneur. It was just nobody taught me that that was a separate path that I could take.
And that's a job in and of itself. Everybody makes it seem super easy, and you can, you know, work from your couch. Yeah, you can until midnight every day of the week. You know, you had to put those boundaries on to say, I'm wearing clothes today. And I'm leaving the house today. And if you don't get my email answered, then you're going to have to get over it. Like,
that's right.
You got to create a backbone to stand up and be an entrepreneur. And it's not for everybody, but it is for so many of us.
Yes.
And I'm so proud of you for stepping out and doing that. I got to tell you that I stuck with a job for 7 years, but I was just employed at the same place. Every 6 months, I was changing positions. I was the safety coordinator. I was the mine inspector. I was this. I was in charge of insurance. I covered all sorts of areas. But still, you're right, looking for impact. I wanted to have my voice heard. And I was in the family company, and I was, barely out of college. They've been doing it this way for 30 years.
Yeah.
Who do I think I am?
Right. And I think that's something I never knew about entrepreneurs. I always thought, oh, people who start businesses, they just want to make money. Like, how boring, like they just want to make money. That's not what I'm about. I'm about impact. And then I realized, no, people who start businesses, they do so because they want to make an impact. The money comes later. But often when you start a business, you're risking a lot. You're putting in a lot of your own money, and you really just want to help people and you want to make an impact. And I didn't know that going in.
And same for real estate investors, you want to improve the community. So many people are so down on landlords. Well, I'm sorry, Karen, but I didn't see you pouring in $15,000 into a project last month. I didn't see you giving up nights with your kids and perfectly home cooked meals and all these other things and 10 extra pounds from stress just so that you can be a real estate investor. Like, I'm not doing this just for the money. I'm doing this for everybody. The tide lifts all ships. When I improve this house, that house, and the other house, every 20 of y'all benefit from that. So you're welcome.
I know, right? It's like, I think people they dwell on the negative, but they don't see all the positive that comes from it.
I think women really are attracted to that impact too, because a lot of ladies that I talk to have kids in high school or college, and so they don't have a 7 and a 4-year-old to entertain them and run them like crazy and drive them crazy. They've got other problems, and they're missing a little bit of that impact in somebody's life. I think impact is a great word to say, I need something to do with my time now. I need something to invest in. And, a lot of women, like you said, did FHA loans. They've got a house or two, but they're trying to figure out how to get creative or scale or make a greater impact with other people or all this stuff, which is what you and Julie are doing too. So tell me about y'all's first investment.
This is a great segue, because that first investment that we made as a partnership through Good Egg Investments was in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was a portfolio deal of 2 larger multifamilies. So I think one was 40-ish units, the other was 70-ish units, so about 100 units altogether. And at this point, so we, Julie and I had both started out house hacking, then we started doing out-of-state rentals. This first deal that we did together as a syndication, we were bringing together lots of different passive investors. And so people who had money, but they didn't want to do the hard work of renovating the properties. So we found this great market. Huntsville, Alabama was growing very fast. It still is. It's a great market. I still invest there personally as well. And we found these 2 properties, and we partnered with some people on the ground there as well. And it was a struggle, I tell you. So our main role in this deal was helping to raise the capital to get the deal closed. And so we were trying to raise a few $1 million to close this deal. And this is our first time doing it. So neither of us had a professional real estate background or anything. We were just both moms. We had found that real estate worked well for our families, and we wanted to help other people get into it too. And so we just really, rolled up our sleeves. We got out there, and we started just talking to people and telling them about the benefits of passive investing and how you can put your money in and diversify across different markets without having to do all the legwork. And so it took some time, but we were finally able to raise the capital. And I tell you, this one property in particular, it's in the path of progress, so they call it, right? So which is a nice way of saying it's kind of a dump, but it's on its way to see brighter days. And so this particular property, this is the 75 unit. And this particular property, it needed a good bit of work. And so our team went in there and we started turning over the units. And I had a chance to visit, and I was talking to the property manager, and she was telling me about this one resident in her 90s. She had been living at this property for a couple of decades.
Bless her heart.
And yeah, and because we were revitalizing the community was really coming together and rallying behind this elderly resident whose kids were not able to visit all the time. So she was really just on her own. And so they were taking turns, bringing her meals, taking her to her doctor's appointments, and really just lifting her up. And that is exactly why we do this. It's not for the returns. I mean, the returns are nice, and it's great that it's a win-win situation, but really at the end of the day, to see that sort of impact, the rising tide lifts all ships, everybody wins. And so that's what we're in it for.
That's a great group of people to know that you're invested in their future, and they're going to take good care of your property, which invests in your future. And that's where we really create win-win situations. Like I don't think anybody wants to be the slumlord, but if you're not taking care of my property, I don't know that I care about fixing it fancy for you. But if you're taking really great care of it, maybe I get it, nicer, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of the bare basics. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the Good Egg Investments. Tell me about y'all's podcast. Tell me what you got going on. And yeah, let's start with that.
Okay. So, just as I said at the beginning of this conversation, I never set out to be a real estate investor. And when Julie and I started Good Egg Investments about 2 years ago, at that point, before that, I had never set out to start a company. But what happened was so I'll give you a little bit more context leading up to why we started this company. Was in 2017, I started to get a little more serious about real estate investing and fell into the bigger pockets rabbit hole and started finding all this stuff out. I was like, oh my gosh, I told my husband, I got to quit my job and just focus on real estate investing. This is incredible. We've been missing out on all these opportunities. And so started to focus on our own personal rental properties. But we live in Oakland, California, as you mentioned. And so at first I thought, okay, well, we'll just house hack another duplex. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. And I looked around and I'm like, oh my gosh, it would take years for us to save up the down payment to buy another duplex here. Okay, that's out the window. Yeah. And I was like,
if you could go back to like 1980
right.
something, buy everything,
yes.
whatever.
But
right now, no.
So that's where I was like, okay, rather than invest here, let's find the 1980 version of somewhere else where we can find another market that's on that upswing, and then we can invest there. So we started looking all over the country, and Huntsville was actually the market we decided on. So we started investing there. When you live in the Bay Area in California and you start investing anywhere, basically outside of the Bay Area, it looks like everything's on fire sale. So we started looking at Huntsville. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're telling me I can get a fourplex for $200,000? Okay, I'm going to take 2 of those, 1 of those, 3 of those. I'm like buying up everything. And so we amassed this portfolio, and our friends and family are like, holy cow, I want to do what you're doing. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Can you show me how to do that? And we're like, sure, come on over. I'll teach you, just like you teach people, right? I'm like, okay, I'll teach you how to do it. Okay, so you got to research the markets, you talk to the brokers, then you look at the properties, you underwrite the properties, you analyze, you talk to the lenders, and I'm going down the list, and they're every time, just watch their eyes glaze over. And they're like, wait, you mean I have to do work?
Nope, I'm out.
Like, no, I changed my mind.
I just wanted free money.
Yes. And so I had enough of these conversations where I realized people have money that they want to put into real estate, but they didn't want to do the work. So I said, okay, but they may not have the time or the interest in learning, but I already know how this works. Maybe there's a way for me to bring them into these deals with me. But then I said, you know what? I can't bring them into a duplex. There's not enough room in it. At this point, I didn't know anything about real estate syndications. I didn't know that they were a thing. I was just like, okay, well, maybe instead of a 2-unit, I can do like a 10-unit or 15 unit if I get really ambitious.
Oh, you fancy.
Right? And then I started digging and I was like, oh, there's this thing called a syndication, which is a group investment, and I could lead it, and then other people can just invest their money with me, exactly what all these people want. They just want me to do the work, and they just put in their money and come along for the ride. It's almost like we talk about it like an airplane ride sometimes. The syndicators or the sponsors are the pilots. We do all the hard work. We do the navigation. If anything goes wrong, it's up to us to try to figure out what to do. Everybody else, the passive investors, they're the passengers on the plane. They get to sit back, take a nap, read their book, whatever they want to do. At the end of the day, we're all going to the same place. And so it's just different roles on the airplane ride. But so we were able to put this together. And so that's why Julie and I started this company, was because we were both having these conversations and were so passionate about helping other people to invest their money into real estate and to make a difference in these communities. And so that's what Good Egg Investments is all about. And our podcast, Investing for Good, is all about that too, how you can take your money, put it to work for you, and make a difference.
I love all of that. And I love that you were just taking steps and you were working it and you were doing stuff. And then you kept researching and you kept learning and you kept growing. And then you said, oh, there's this whole other thing. Now let's go over here and let's do this. And yes, it's great. And so many people get so stuck in, look, there's thousands of ways to make money in real estate, but let's get started in it. And then let's see what else we learn. And then let's see what else we learn. And then let's try some of these things. And then let's learn some more and keep going. You don't have to know it all just to get started.
Right. Exactly. And you never stop learning. I mean, even now we're 2 years into our business and we've raised millions of dollars. You'd think we can just sit back and just be like, let's just keep doing what we're doing. But no, we're always thinking, what's the next step? What else can we do? How better can we service our investors and our followers? And that's what investing is all about. That's what being an entrepreneur is all about.
And, we were talking about jobs earlier. A lot of jobs as a real estate broker, I had to take continuing education every year, every 2 years. People think when you start being an investor, like you don't have to do that because you're not like licensed.
Right.
No, you have to keep learning.
Yeah.
That's why I'm planting these seeds in this 15-year-old kid's head. You have to keep learning. Just because you get out of high school, it's not over. Just because you go to college, it's not over. Just because you buy your first duplex, it's not over. I mean, even y'all, I've never done a syndication. I don't even know like how to get started in that, but you got to keep going. You got to keep learning. You got to keep doing different stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't just end. I have a lady in FTDF Plus right now, which is my group coaching. She is a doctorate. She holds a PhD in education, and she's taken my little group coaching class because you never stop learning.
And that's every person that we've talked to who has achieved financial freedom. I always ask them, I'm like, well, why aren't you sitting on a beach right now? Why aren't you just taking your passive income? But no, that's not the type of person who achieves financial freedom. You got to have hustle. You've got to have that hunger. And those are the people who achieve financial freedom, and they don't stop there. They always keep going.
And they're not working for the money. They're working for the fun of it. They're working for the relationships. They're working for the game. They're working for those other things. The reason, this kid that I've hired, he's a gamer. He plays the Xbox. You're talking about your son. He plays the gamer. You're always trying to get the next level, the next level, the next level. Well, the people that don't want to sit at the beach and want to keep playing the real estate game are just playing the next level game. They just taking it off the screen and in real life.
Yep,
exactly.
It's
the same thing. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Annie, it's been awesome talking to you. If you could boil it all down into one sentence though, to people that are trying to get started, they're trying to say, okay, I know enough. Let's just dive in. What would you say to those people?
Do it. Do it now. Do it yesterday. If I could go back, we bought that first house hack when I was 23, but we bought the second one actually when I was 25, I think. But then we didn't buy another one for years. And then it was very slow going for that first 10 years. In that 10 years, we only bought 4 properties. And so if I could do it again, I would do it sooner and I would do it more often. I would put as much money as I could into real estate because, like you said, it's for the long game. You plant those seeds and over time it just blossoms. And so for anybody out there who's looking to get into real estate, just do it. That first deal may not be a home run, but that's okay. You'll learn everything you need to know and move on to the next one, and it'll just keep getting better from there.
And I heard you say that you only did 4 deals in 10 years. I mean, it's not like you only did 4 deals in 10 years. You also moved across the country. You had some babies. You were working regular jobs. You lived a good life. Like,
True.
I'm so proud of you for doing 4 deals in 10 years. Some people go decades without doing 1 deal. And I mean, I don't know your parents. I love your parents, but they didn't do 4 deals in 10 years.
Nope, they sure
did. I really want to encourage you to celebrate. You did 4 deals in 10 years and okay, people did more faster, whatever. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the other things going on that you did. And I am a victim of this. I have to catch myself saying this so I catch other people too. I'm not picking on you.
Yeah.
I had a goal in April to write a book and I didn't do it. I had it ready, almost done. All I had to do was like tie up loose ends. I had all month to do it. And life got in the way. And so technically I failed. I didn't hit my goal. Mm-hmm. But then I looked at all the other things that I did accomplish. And I mean, I freaking knocked it out of the park. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So celebrate what you did and how you did it and the lessons you learned and the life you're living because of those things. Like, I'm super proud of you for doing syndications now. I mean, okay, 4 in 10 years. You skipped ahead to 110 units on the next one. Like, you did great.
Yes. And now we're doing, we're raising millions of dollars for every deal and we're helping hundreds of investors. And so I couldn't be happier and more content. And that's such a good reminder for us, especially as women. We always get stuck on the things that we didn't do and we forget to celebrate the things that we did accomplish.
And you accomplished a ton. Having a job, staying married is an accomplishment over 10 years too. I mean, like, celebrate it. It's all good. And we also have a really hard time comparing ourselves to, well, other people did 50 deals in 5 years. And, that's why I only did 4 in 10. Come on, guys.
It's so true.
Do it however you want to, but get out there and do it. You're right.
Yes.
Right. All right. If people want to follow up with you, how can they find you and subscribe to your podcast as well?
Absolutely. So the best place to go is our website, goodegginvestments.com. And if you're totally new to passive investing, we have a free 7-day email course for you. We have a book. It's called Investing for Good. You can't see it quite because of my green screen, but Investing for Good is our book and you can get a free hardcover copy also on our website, and our podcast is Investing for Good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Annie. I really appreciate it. And y'all go get her free gift. Also, I've got a free gift on getting your first deal done fast. Go to getyourfirstdeal.com and we will be teaching you all the things that you need over the next 7 days. I love it. Thank you. Y'all don't forget to subscribe and I will see y'all next week.